Today, we're joined by Dr. Roxanne Pero, a board-certified OB-GYN turned holistic practitioner who's on a mission to help us live with fewer toxins and more intention. After 12 years of caring for thousands of women in private practice, she's now bridging the gap between conventional medicine and root cause, lifestyle medicine. In this episode, we'll dive into low toxic living, or as Dr. Roxanne likes to say, mindful consuming, and explore practical ways to make healthier choices every day. So let's make time for Dr. Roxanne Pero. Hi, Dr. Roxanne. Thank you for making time with us today on the Make Time podcast.
Thank you, ladies, for having me.
So we're really excited to have you on today. So let's just get right into it. Dr. Roxanne, what is the most important thing that we think women should be making time for, and why?
For me and for today's podcast subject, it's going to be, I don't necessarily like saying low tox living, but maybe even using the phrase mindful consuming, making time for really looking at the products that we're exposing ourselves and our families to is what I would love to see more women do.
In what respect? Like, what are we talking about? Like household products? Are we talking about what we're putting on our body, in our body?
I love to talk makeup. I've always loved makeup. I love the fact that you can change your look with makeup or just be someone else or feel differently just based on makeup. And so I love educating women about the toxins that are lurking in makeup, which seems like such an innocent thing, right? But unfortunately, there's a lot of toxins in makeup products out there. And then just in general, we as women put so many products on our skin compared to men before we even walk out the door. And then we're being exposed to air pollution and the toxins that, we come into contact with unknowingly in our foods. So I try to take it little by little with women, and makeup is low-hanging fruit because there's so many options that are out there.
There's a lot more in the clean beauty space now, I find.
Yeah. So for those women who are listening, that just don't understand what being exposed to some sort of toxic burden, like for makeup, for instance, like, can you just drill down on that a little bit so our listeners understand, like, what are some of the risks for using products that are toxic? I mean, our skin is our biggest organ. And so if you could just drill down on that a little bit.
Yeah. So, it's going to be a lot of those really appealing products, like long lasting, wrinkle reducing, fine line reducing, that have toxins that we really need to be paying attention to, specifically what are called endocrine disrupting toxins. And these are substances that some of them are actually natural and most of them are synthetic, man-made, that literally hijack our hormones. They mimic estrogen, they can disrupt thyroid function, and it's unbelievable, really, when you think about it, that something as minimal as makeup can have such a disruption for your hormone system. But we see it a lot, and we have evidence-based research that's been shown that it's been linked to female disorders and diagnoses like endometriosis, like polycystic ovarian syndrome, like fibroids, and definitely infertility and early menopause.
Yeah. And also, like in my case, I had really early severe osteoporosis. So I think that when you start looking at, phthalates, endocrine disruption, and that hormonal imbalance, and when you start like digging into this, and not to be scary, it's tied to and collaborates with so many issues and challenges that women are having with their health today. So I'm really excited to talk about this, because this is one of my favorite things to talk about. So for women that are listening that are like, okay, so I want to take a couple steps to be in a more low tox environment and make some like kind of lowering toxin commitments in my life. Can you give them 3 actionable tips that you think are a great place to start?
Yes, absolutely. So one, low-hanging fruit is downloading an app. Okay. It's so fun to scan too. I mean, just like my kids, when we go to the grocery store and they get the scanner and we love using it, it's fun to scan products. And like you said, yes, it can feel overwhelming. And with all of the things that we have to deal with in this world, especially as moms, we might feel like this is like not something we have time for our plate, but a little bit at a time goes a long way. So the Yuka app, YUKA, is great. The Think Dirty app by EWG is great. And there's a couple of others out there as well. For most of them, they don't cost anything. Of course, they have, where you can download a premium plan, but they don't. The basic ones don't cost anything, and they give you a lot of bang for your buck. And you just scan your products, and then they'll tell you if some of those ingredients are endocrine disruptors. And I do encourage patients, again, let's start with the basics. Yes, you might have a product that you love that scans and it's saying that it's bad, but it might be bad because it's an allergen, although it doesn't cause allergens for you. It might say that it's bad because it's an environmental pollutant. And yes, we want to care about our environment. But again, it kind of starts with us. What on there is doable for you? If you're like, okay, well, it doesn't have any endocrine disruptors and I just bought this. So I'm going to go through the product and then I'll find alternatives. And I love those apps too, because they give you alternatives. They say, okay, well, instead of this one, think about this one. So that's one. Number two is, when we think about toxins as well, crazy enough, things like phthalates, things like BPA are in the air that we breathe. And so unfortunately, we can't always rely on our home to filter out air properly. And sometimes because it's such a concentrated space, it can have more air pollution than going outside. So getting an air filter for the main spaces in your home is a huge win for reducing your toxic load. And then the third one is trying to really understand what you're putting in your body. Unfortunately, foods have very high toxic loads of these same things, phthalates, BPAs, microplastics. And so obviously organic can cost more. So thinking about doing the Dirty Dozen list that you can get on the ewg.org website, or even just Googling Dirty Dozen, and trying to avoid those that are non-organic, but then looking at the Clean 15 and understanding that those are likely pretty good to eat when they're not organic.
So I think, I happen to know quite a lot and have done a lot of work with the Air Doctor brand. And so one thing that's really important when you're looking at air purification is that whatever air purifier you have has a heavy VOC carbon filter, because when we're talking about women's health and things that affect women's health and these phthalates, it's typically not, like dust or pet dander or things like that are doing the harm. It's the contaminants that you can't see that are coming from fragrances, cleaning products, like all these things that are what's really messing with our hormones. And so that kind of making sure that whatever you have purifying your air at home has that carbon in it is super duper important. And then to talk about food, I think it's, right now we're in the middle of the health conversation is so massive right now, just for the time we're in here in the United States. I think it's beautiful. I also think that we just really need to watch the plastics, and so when you're at the store, it's so secondhand to just grab something like pre-made food or, and we're so programmed to just grab things, and so much stuff is in plastic.
So everything.
Yeah, as well. And even, just thinking about they've got fruit out there, and then we take the fruit and we put it in a plastic bag. Just put it in your grocery cart. You don't need the plastic, Oh, yeah, it's just rethinking. It's just being mindful about those little things, which again, can seem like such a pain in the butt that we have to do that, but we really can't afford to be mindless consumers in this environment.
I always make sure when I go to the grocery store that I have, my reusable bag, but I also go a little deeper and get those, those fabric net type bags so that I'm putting the fruit inside there. I mean, that is the thing. You have to be conscious. You have to be mindful. And sure, there are times where you're like, I need to run to the grocery store and you don't have the stuff in your car or whatever. But overall, it's just, at least if you're doing this 80% of the time, being thoughtful, mindful is so important.
So all these things, I think it's really important to just kind of lean in on, we know that these endocrine disruptors and phthalates and all these things, they're really bad for women's health, their fertility, hormonal fluctuation, all this stuff. But for women at home, what are some signs, like if you've had exposure or overexposure and have like toxic overload and you're worried that you're hitting perimenopause earlier than you should be, if you're having kind of infrequent menstrual cycles, what are some signs that people can look out for if they're concerned that this is happening to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, for me and for what I do, I'm a conventionally trained OB-GYN. And then I, took a sabbatical and went through functional medicine and lifestyle medicine certifications. And so I understand that ultimately, what we want to happen in this holistic and integrated space is for your body to do detoxification. Okay. And I think detox is a dirty word for some, especially more conventionally trained providers, because it's just like, well, why are you selling someone a detox protocol? Their bodies can detox on their own. And that's exactly right. And that's really where we should be at, understanding that, hey, you have all the tools that you need to detoxify. I can give you something to augment that detoxification and speed it up. But ultimately, I want you to sweat more. I want you to hydrate more. I want you to, be having regular bowel movements, sleeping well, all of those just basic things. And so when we're getting into perimenopause, right, I feel like, at least for me in my time, like as I'm going through perimenopause, this is like also the time in my life where I feel like I have less time for myself to do those things. So circling back to prioritizing self-care, understanding that if you're starting to have hot flashes, night sweats, irregular periods, you don't feel as resilient as you used to feel. Hey, estrogen is going crazy right now. So if I know I need to detoxify estrogen better in order to help me mitigate these symptoms and feel better through perimenopause, then I've got to reduce my toxic load as well. And I love that the conversation that people are having about perimenopause and menopause now. It's wild. I love it. It's awesome. Because I think at least in our generation, I remember my mom going through menopause and it was like, it was a big deal. I felt so bad for her and I don't want that to be our story.
Yeah. And not talked about. And I love that people are they're so open about this conversation now so that we can help the next woman who will be going. I'm in perimenopause right now. So I love hearing all of this and like getting all the information so I can go through menopause, hopefully okay.
Always love to ask our guests, what are you not making time for that you're going to commit to making more time for?
I love that question. And I'm going to be honest, because I think that verbalizing what you really want and need in your life is the first step in actually making it happen. But I need to make more time for therapy. I really do. I love therapy. It always helps. And then you feel like, I'm good for now. But doing that as preventive, gosh, I wish that was something that all insurance paid for and everyone had access to. So
I think weekly check-ins are so important. And however that looks like, if it's going to see a therapist, if it's being able to write your feelings out, down, or talking to a friend, like that download is so important for our health.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you don't have a therapist right now, I always just say make an honorary one, right? Just like grab a friend and make sure, what do you say that I love so much? Better. What do you say?
Better out than in.
Yes. Better out than in. That's what Emma says. I love that. I've been saying that a lot lately. I'm like, Emma says better out than in. And I'm a very big fan of therapy too. And I think that, and right now we're doing a Make Time to Write challenge. It's on our
I love that.
Socials. And it's been so healing we were writing for 7 minutes every day. So that's a form of therapy also. So it's been
yes, great. I love it.
Dr. Roxanne, it's been so nice having this conversation with you. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Absolutely. So I have an office. It's called Alive&Well in Dallas, Texas. But I'm also licensed in California, Colorado, and Louisiana. Louisiana because I'm from Louisiana. So I love seeing all my people from there. So, and then I'm on Instagram at Dr. Roxanne Pero.
All right.
We love talking to you today. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope that listening to our podcast has empowered you to make more time for yourself. So make sure to subscribe, please leave a review, and share with a friend who could use a healthy reminder on the importance of making time.
And make sure to keep tuning in as we will continue to bring on incredible guests to share their Make Time tips on our upcoming episodes. And come say hi over at Make Time Pod or visit us at maketimewellness.com.
Until next time, make time.